Jean sat in the quiet of the deep-sea lab. The only sounds were the low hum of machines and the soft creak of the station against the immense pressure outside. He was a man who liked the quiet. He was a marine biologist. His home for the last 6 months was Hadal Bas. It was a small cluster of strong pods sitting on the very bottom of the Mariana Trench. The darkness outside was complete, a heavy blanket that hid the strangest life on Earth. He was checking the latest samples. They were from a hot vent field a kilometer away. A robotic arm had collected them. The water around those vents was superheated and full of poison, but life always found a way. He was looking at a new type of bacteria. It glowed with a soft blue light. Under his microscope, it moved in slow, beautiful patterns. Jin to surface. Daily check-in. He spoke into the comms unit. His voice was calm. It was a familiar routine. A crackle, then a voice came back. It was Mina, the communications officer on the support ship Aegir, far above on the ocean's surface. The signal took a few seconds to travel through all that water. Hey, Jin. Reading you. How's the quietest workplace in the world? Her voice was a welcome link to the world of light and air. Quiet, Jin said with a small smile. And productive. This new strain is fascinating. Its bioluminescence is unlike anything I've seen. It doesn't just glow. The light seems to pulse in a pattern, almost like a language. Maybe it's trying to say hello, Mina joked. Maybe, Jin replied, staring at the blue glow. Or maybe it's saying something else. Its genetic structure is bizarre. It has protein sequences that look manufactured, not natural. Don't go seeing aliens in every Petri dish. Jin, it's probably just another weird deep-sea bug. Mina's tone was light, but he could hear the slight concern. He knew she thought he had been down here too long. Probably, he agreed, but he wasn't so sure. He had a feeling, a scientist's instinct. This was different. He finished the call and turned back to his work. The lab was a small circular room. Thick metal walls and a large clear viewport looked out into the endless black. Right now, the only light outside was from the base's own powerful lamps, cutting bright cones through the water. Tiny, strange creatures drawn to the light would drift by like snow. His next step was to put a concentrated sample of the bacteria into the gene sequencer. This machine would map out its entire DNA. It was a delicate process. The sample had to be held in a special high-pressure chamber to keep it stable. It was used to the crushing weight of the deep ocean. He prepared the sample with care. He pipetted the glowing blue liquid into a small, tough capsule. He then carried the capsule over to the sequencer. The machine stood against the wall, a complex box of wires and lights. He opened the small, heavy door to the pressure chamber. As he slid the capsule into its slot, his elbow bumped a lever on the side of a nearby console. It was a lever for a fluid transfer system he wasn't using. The bump was gentle, but it was enough. A sharp hissing sound filled the room. Jin froze. He knew that sound. It was the sound of a high-pressure seal failing. He turned his head slowly. A fine mist was spraying from a joint in the pipe connected to the sequencer's chamber. The mist was glowing a faint, eerie blue. It was the bacteria, aerosolized and now escaping into the lab's air. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was a worst-case scenario. An unknown biological agent loose in a sealed environment. Containment breach. Lab 1, he yelled, even though no one could hear him. He slammed his hand on the large red emergency button on the wall. A loud alarm blared. Red lights flashed, turning the room into a pulsing nightmare. A heavy emergency door started to slide down from the ceiling, ready to seal off the lab. But it was too slow. The hiss became a shriek. The weak point in the pipe gave way completely. Not with a burst, but with a terrible, violent rip. A jet of icy cold pressurized seawater, mixed with the glowing blue bacteria, exploded into the room. The force of it knocked Jin off his feet. He slammed into a console, pain shooting up his back. The water was brutally cold. It felt like being hit by a truck. The pressure was immense, instantly flooding the small space. Equipment short-circuited with loud pops and showers of sparks. The red emergency lights flickered. He was drowning. The freezing water filled his mouth, his nose. He thrashed, trying to get to the emergency pod. It was a small personal submarine, his only way out. It was just 3 meters away, but in the churning, violent flood, it felt like a kilometer. His lungs burned. He could see the blue glow of the bacteria all around him, mixing with the water, covering his hands, his face. It felt like it was crawling into his skin, his eyes. He kicked hard, pushing through the swirling chaos. His hand touched the cold metal of the pod. He fumbled for the hatch release. His vision was going dark at the edges. He found the lever and pulled. The hatch opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. He hauled himself inside, coughing and choking on seawater. He turned and slammed the button to close the hatch. It slid shut, sealing him in a small, dry, dark space. He lay on the floor of the pod, gasping for air. He was shivering uncontrollably from the cold. He could still see the faint blue glow on his wet suit, on his skin. He felt a strange tingling sensation all over his body. It was not painful but deeply wrong. He had to get out. He crawled into the pilot's seat and pressed the launch sequence. Nothing happened. The power was dead. The flood must have damaged the base's main systems, cutting off the pod. He was trapped, at the bottom of the ocean in a small metal coffin in the dark. He tried the radio. Mayday, Mayday. This is Hadal Base. Containment breach. Total failure. I am in the emergency pod, but I have no power. Does anyone copy? Only static answered. The water outside the pod's small viewport was now pitch black. The base's lights were out. The only light was the faint, fading blue glow on his own hands. He felt a profound tiredness wash over him. It was more than exhaustion. It was a heavy, chemical sleepiness that his burning lungs and pounding heart could not fight. The tingling feeling grew stronger, spreading through his muscles into his bones. He knew this was it. He was going to die here. The bacteria, whatever it was in him now. He could feel it working, changing him. His last thought was not of fear, but of a strange, cold curiosity. What had he discovered? What was it doing to him? His eyes closed. His body went limp in the chair. The last of the blue glow on his skin seemed to pulse once, softly, and then sink in, disappearing. The pod was silent. The lab outside was a destroyed, water-filled wreck, and Jin, the sole survivor, was no longer the man who had entered it. He was something new, sleeping in the dark at the bottom of the world. A soft mechanical beeping pulled him from the darkness. It was a steady, repeating sound, a familiar sound. It was the medbay's life signs monitor. Jin's eyes fluttered open. He was lying on a firm bed. A white ceiling was above him. He felt fine, better than fine. He felt rested and clear-headed. This was wrong. This was very wrong. He sat up quickly. The movement was smooth and effortless. He looked around. He was in the small medical room of Hadal Bus. The air was clean and cool. The lights were on, bright and steady. Everything was in its place. There was no sign of the flood, no water, no damage. He looked down at himself. He was wearing a clean, dry set of base clothes. His skin was clean. There was no blue glow. He touched his face, his arms. He was real. He was alive. This was impossible. He remembered the freezing water, the crushing pressure, the blue mist covering him. He remembered the desperate fight for the pod. The darkness closing in. He swung his legs off the bed. His body felt different, stronger, lighter. He stood up. There was no stiffness, no pain from where he had slammed into the console. He walked to the medbay's small mirror. The face that looked back was his, but the eyes were different. They seemed to gather the light in the room. He could see every detail in the dim corner behind him without turning his head. The faint, almost invisible lines on his own face were as clear as if drawn on paper. He could hear things, too, not just the beeping monitor. He could hear the low thrum of the base's power generator, 2 rooms away. He could hear the soft rush of water outside the hull. It was a symphony of sound he had never noticed before. A wave of panic hit him. What had happened to him? He went to the medbay's computer terminal. His hands moved over the keyboard, his fingers feeling oddly precise. He initiated a full self-diagnostic scan. The machine hummed and a laser passed over his body. A few minutes later, the results came up on the screen. He read them. Then he read them again. His blood ran cold. The scan showed his basic vitals were perfect. Too perfect. His muscle density had increased. His bone strength was off the charts for a human. His optic nerves showed unprecedented activity, but it was the genetic analysis that made his stomach drop. His DNA was wrong. Woven into his own human genetic code were long, complex sequences that were not human. They were alien. They were the same sequences he had started to map from the glowing bacteria. The organism had not just been on his skin. It had merged with him. It had rewritten him at the most fundamental level. He was no longer just Jin. He was a hybrid, a new thing. A light on the communications panel began to blink. It was the surface link. He walked over, his movements silent and sure, and opened the channel. Jin? Jin, is that you? Your life signs just came back online. We lost all contact with Hadal base for 18 hours. What happened? It was Mina's voice, filled with relief and worry. 18 hours. He had been out for 18 hours, Mina, he said. His own voice sounded strange in his ears. He could hear every tiny vibration of his vocal cords. There was an accident, a breach. The lab is flooded. A breach. Are you hurt? The medbay readings are bizarre. They're showing impossible numbers. Are you sure you're okay? How could he explain? I'm functional. The base's automated systems must have purged the water and restored power to this section. I was in the emergency pod. Okay, just stay calm, Mina said, though her voice was not calm. We need to get you out of there. Initiate the emergency ascent sequence on the pod. Now. Jin looked at the data on the screen again. The alien code stared back at him. It's not that simple, Mina. Something happened to me. The bacteria, it's in my cells. My DNA is altered. There was a long silence from the other end. When Mina spoke again, her voice was careful. The voice of someone talking to a person who might be crazy or in shock. Jin, listen to me. You've been through a major trauma. You're probably suffering from decompression sickness or nitrogen narcosis. It can make you confused, see things that aren't there. You need to get to the surface for proper medical care. I'm not confused, he said, his voice low. The scan is right here. I can feel it. My senses are different. Jin, just follow the procedure. Get in the pod. Press the big green button. We'll have you up here in a few hours. He knew she didn't believe him. He wouldn't have believed it either. He was a scientist. He needed more data. I need to assess the damage to the base first, he said, making his voice sound as normal as he could. I'll check the systems and report back. Jin, that's not the protocol. The protocol is to evacuate immediately. I'll be quick. Jin, out. He closed the channel before she could argue. He couldn't leave, not yet. Not without understanding. He left the med bay and moved through the base's central corridor. The door to Lab 1 was sealed shut, a red light glowing above it. The emergency bulkhead had done its job, sealing the flooded section away from the rest of the base. He was safe from that. He went to the control room. The main sensor array was still online. It showed the outside environment, the water temperature, the currents, the life forms. He looked at the screen showing the external camera feeds. The powerful lights were back on, illuminating the barren seabed around the base. It was usually empty, save for the occasional strange fish or cloud of sediment. It was not empty now. Large, dark shapes moved at the edge of the light. They were bigger than any fish he had ever seen down here. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace that was unnerving. They weren't swimming so much as gliding, their forms sleek and shadowy. He zoomed in the camera on one of them, his breath caught in his throat. It was a creature about the size of a large dolphin. Its body was long and smooth like a deep-sea eel, but thicker. Its skin was blacker than the surrounding water, a darkness that seemed to swallow the light. Along its sides were faint, pulsating patterns of that same familiar blue light. It had no visible eyes, but a cluster of delicate, glowing filaments trailed from its head, twitching and sensing the water around it. Its mouth was closed, but he could see hints of sharp, bony structures within. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. It was impossible, and it was not alone. The sensor showed dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They were circling the base. They were not attacking. They were just there, waiting. As he watched, the creature he was focused on turned. It glided directly towards the main viewport of the control room. It moved right up to the thick glass until its head was only a meter from where Jin stood. The blue filaments on its head glowed brighter. They reached out, almost touching the glass. Jin felt a strange sensation in his mind. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a voice. It was a feeling. A simple, clear concept that appeared in his thoughts as if he had always known it. It was a single word. A name, Source. He stumbled back from the viewport, his heart pounding. The creature outside remained perfectly still, its filaments glowing softly. The feeling came again, stronger this time. It was not a question. It was a statement of fact, a recognition. You are awake. They knew he was here. They knew what he was, and they believed, with a certainty that echoed in his very soul, that he was their maker. Jin stood frozen in the control room. The creature was right outside the thick glass. It was not moving. It was just waiting. The feeling in his mind was gone, but the memory of it was sharp and clear. Source, you are awake. He took a slow step closer to the viewport. The creature did not react. Its body was sleek and powerful. The blue lights along its side pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm. It looked like a deep-sea predator, but it showed no aggression. It felt more like a dog waiting for its owner. He reached out a hand, not touching the glass, but pointing at the creature. In his mind, he formed a thought, pushing it outwards like he was trying to shout without using his voice. "What are you?" There was no direct answer. Instead, a wave of information flooded into his mind. It was not in words. It was a series of sensations and images. He felt the crushing pressure of the deep, but it felt like a comfortable blanket. He saw the hot vents where the bacteria lived, but he saw them as a place of warmth and creation. He felt the connection between all the creatures outside, a web of silent thought that bound them together. They were not many individuals. They were one mind and many bodies. A chorus. The feeling solidified into a concept. We are the chorus. Jin pulled his hand back, breaking the connection. His head was spinning. This was too much. He was communicating with a hive mind of alien deep-sea beings, beings that thought he had made them. The communications panel behind him started beeping urgently. The light was flashing red. It was Mina. He walked back to the panel, his legs feeling weak. He opened the channel. "Jin, you have to answer me. Our long-range sonar is going crazy. There are massive biological signals all around your base. What is happening down there?" Her voice was tight with fear. Jin looked at the viewport. The creature was still there. More had joined it, their dark forms and blue lights creating a silent, watching audience. "They're here," Jin said, his voice quiet. "Who's there? Jin, are you in danger? Are they hostile?" "No," Jin said, and he realized it was the truth. "They're not hostile. They're the children of the bacteria. It changed me and it created them. They think I'm their source." There was a long silence on the other end. When Mina spoke again, her voice was very controlled. "Jin, listen to me very carefully. You are not thinking clearly. There is no such thing. You are suffering from a psychological break. You need to get in the pod and come up now. I'm not crazy, Mina. Look at your sonar. Those signals are real. I am looking at them. Then they are a previously undiscovered species, and you are trapped in a base with them. This is even more reason to evacuate." As she spoke, Jin watched the chorus outside. They began to move. They drifted away from the viewport and started gathering sediment and chunks of rock from the seabed. They were not just moving the rocks. They were shaping them. Their bodies glowed brighter. And where they touched the stones seemed to soften and fuse together. They were building. "What are they doing?" Mina asked, her voice a whisper. She was watching too, through the base's external camera feeds he was sending to the surface. "I don't know," Jin whispered back. The chorus worked with incredible speed and coordination. They built tall, slender spires that reached up from the seabed. They constructed archways and domes. They lined all the structures with their glowing blue light. It was not a random pile of rocks. It was a city. A beautiful alien bioluminescent city rising from the absolute darkness, and it was all centered on Hadal Base. They were building it for him. "Jin," Mina said, her voice full of awe and horror. This is impossible. No animal can do this. They're not animals," Jin said. He felt a strange emotion looking at the glowing city. It was pride. A deep, unsettling sense of ownership. These were his. He had not asked for them, but they were here because of him. One of the creatures, larger than the others, broke away from the construction. It carried something in its mouth, a long, straight piece of polished, dark rock. It swam to the base and laid the object gently on the seabed right in front of the main hatch. Then it backed away and waited. It was a gift. Jin made a decision. He walked away from the comms panel, ignoring Mina's voice calling his name. He went to the airlock chamber. He put on a heavy-duty suit. It was a risk, but he had to know. He had to be closer. He cycled through the airlock and stepped out onto the seabed. The pressure was immense, but the suit held. The water was cold. The only light came from the chorus and their new city, casting everything in a soft blue glow. The creatures stopped their work. Every single one of them turned towards him. There were hundreds of them now, hovering in the water perfectly still. They were all looking at him. The large one who had brought the gift swam forward slowly. It stopped a few meters away. It was even more magnificent up close. Its skin was like polished black stone. The blue filaments on its head waved gently, and Jin felt the familiar touch in his mind. Source. You walk among us. The feeling was filled with a warmth and a devotion that was overwhelming. It was like the love of 1,000 children all directed at him. He looked down at the gift. It was the piece of rock, carved with intricate patterns that matched the pulsing lights on their bodies. It was a work of art. He reached out with a gloved hand and touched it. A jolt went through him. It was not a physical shock. It was another flood of information. He saw the deep ocean through their eyes. He felt their joy at his presence. He felt their simple, pure purpose to protect him, to build for him, to exist for him. He was their maker, their God, and in that moment, standing in the silent, glowing city at the bottom of the world, a part of him started to believe it too. The feeling of connection was intoxicating. For a long time, Jin stood on the seabed, his hand on the carved stone. The chorus surrounded him, a silent, respectful circle of devotion. Their simple, warm thoughts filled his mind. There was no fear, no doubt. Only a perfect, unified purpose. He was the center of their world. A sharp, frantic voice cut through the peace. It was Mina screaming from the speaker in his helmet. Jin, get back inside, now. The Aegir is launching an ROV. It's a remote-operated vehicle. It's armed. They think you're being held hostage by hostile organisms. The spell was broken. Jin snapped his head up. He looked towards the darkness above, but he could see nothing. The chorus, however, reacted instantly. Their peaceful mood vanished. He felt a shift in their collective mind. The warmth was replaced by a cold, sharp alertness. They sensed the threat. Tell them to stop, Mina. It's not what they think. Jin yelled into his comms, turning and rushing back towards the airlock. It's too late. The captain gave the order. They see the structures as a threat. They think the creatures are intelligent and hostile. Get inside. Jin cycled through the airlock as fast as the machinery would allow. He threw off his helmet and ran to the control room. On the main sensor screen, he saw it. A large, boxy machine with powerful lights and robotic arms was descending towards the base. One of its arms ended not in a gripper but in a high-pressure water cutter, a tool that could slice through metal. The chorus watched it come. They did not scatter. They moved into a new formation, a swirling, coordinated cloud between the descending machine and the base. Their blue lights began to pulse rapidly, a warning flash. Tell the ROV to retreat, Jin shouted to Mina. It's provoking them. I'm trying. The military advisor on board is in charge. He won't listen. The ROV ignored the display. It continued its descent, its water cutter arm power up with a high-pitched whine that Jin could hear even through the hull. It was heading straight for one of the newly built spires as if to test the creature's resolve. That was the final straw. The chorus moved as one. They did not attack with teeth or claws. They did not ram the machine. Instead, they swarmed over it. Dozens of the sleek black creatures covered the ROV completely, blocking its lights and cameras. Jin watched the sensor data. It was unbelievable. The ROV's metal hull began to dissolve. It wasn't melting from heat. It was coming apart, breaking down into a cloud of fine metallic particles. The cores were secreting a powerful enzyme or acid, something that dismantled materials on a molecular level. The water around the ROV turned into a shimmering metallic soup. In less than a minute, the entire expensive armed machine was gone. Not destroyed, but disassembled. The particles drifted down and the chorus began to gather them, directing the flow of metal dust towards their city. They were using the material, incorporating it into their structures, strengthening them. The control room was silent. On the surface, the command center on the Aegir would be in chaos. Jin stared, his mouth dry. He had known they were powerful, but this was something else. This was a level of biological technology beyond anything he could imagine. They hadn't just fought back. They had harvested their enemy. Then he felt their minds turn. The cold alertness was now a hot, focused anger. They had identified the source of the threat. The large ship on the surface, the Aegir. A new intention formed in the chorus, a unified, terrifying purpose. They would go up. They would remove the threat to their source. Jin saw it in his mind. He saw them rising through the water, a legion of black shapes. He saw them swarming the A-gear, reducing it to dust in the water. He saw Mina and the crew dying. No, he screamed. He wasn't sure if he screamed it out loud or just in his mind. He slammed his hands on the console. Stop, you will not harm them. He pushed the thought out with all his will, filling it with a commanding fatherly anger. Stop, the effect was immediate. The chorus froze in place. Their aggressive swirling stopped. The angry pulse of their lights slowed, returning to a soft, confused glow. The intention to attack the surface vanished, replaced by a sense of waiting. Of obedience. They had heard him. And they had listened. He stood there panting, his heart pounding. He had just commanded an army of deep-sea monsters. And they had obeyed. Mina's voice came through, shaky and terrified. Jin, what just happened? We lost the ROV. Everything just vanished, and then our sonar showed them starting to move upwards. And then they stopped. Why did they stop? Jin looked out at the chorus. They were slowly returning to their city, their forms subdued. They had been ready to wage a war for him, and he had told them no. He felt their confusion, but also their unwavering loyalty. They stopped, Jin said, his voice tired, because I told them to. There was a long silence from Mina. The reality of the situation was finally sinking in for her. Jin was not a prisoner. He was not a victim. He was in control. You can control them? She asked, her voice a whisper. I don't control them, Jin corrected, watching his children return to their work. They listen to me. They protect me, and if I tell them not to destroy your ship, they won't. He could hear her breathing heavily on the other end. The world had just changed forever, and they were the only two people who knew it. Okay, Mina said finally, her voice firming up with a new resolve. Okay, Jin, I believe you. Now I have to go and convince a very frightened ship captain not to do anything else stupid. Don't let your children eat us. I won't, Jin said. He closed the channel and leaned heavily against the console. He looked at his own reflection in the dark screen. The man looking back had the face of a scientist but the eyes of a king of the abyss. He had the power to protect the world above, or to unleash a horror upon it. The weight of that knowledge was heavier than all the pressure of the deep ocean. The peace did not last. The surface world could not ignore what had happened. The loss of the ROV was not just an accident. It was an act of war in the eyes of the military. The A-gear was ordered to stand down and was replaced within hours by a much larger ship, a Navy vessel named the Vanguard. Jin watched it all on the sensors. The Vanguard was a grim, gray fortress of a ship. It did not send polite messages. Its first communication was a blunt, automated broadcast on all channels. Attention Hadal Base. This is the naval vessel Vanguard. You are ordered to evacuate the facility immediately. The area is now a designated military quarantine zone. Any hostile biological activity will be met with lethal force. You have 1 hour to initiate ascent. Jin felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He opened a channel to the Vanguard, trying to keep his voice calm. This is Dr. Jin from Hadal Base. The situation is under control. The organisms are not hostile. I repeat, they are not hostile. An evacuation is not necessary. A new voice came back, hard and official. Dr. Jin, this is Commander Park of the Vanguard. Your judgment is in question. We have visual confirmation of aggressive behavior resulting in the destruction of property. You will comply with the order. If you do not ascend in 1 hour, we will be forced to sanitize the area with depth charges. Depth charges. They were going to bomb the trench. They were going to kill the chorus. They were going to kill his children. Panic surged through him. At the same time, he felt a wave of fury from the chorus. They understood the threat. The water itself seemed to vibrate with their anger. On the sensors, he saw them gathering. Not hundreds, but thousands now. They rose from the deeper darkness around the trench, a vast, silent army of sleek black forms and pulsating blue lights. They were preparing to defend their home. To defend him, he felt their plan form in their collective mind. It was simple and terrible. They would rise to the surface. They would swarm the Vanguard. They would tear it apart molecule by molecule, just like they had with the ROV. They would then move towards the nearest land. Nothing would stop them. Jin saw the future in that moment. He saw the oceans turning black with his children. He saw coastal cities falling silent as the chorus washed over them, disassembling everything in their path. It would be the end of the world, he knew, and it would be his fault. He stood at the crossroads. His heart was torn in two. One path was simple. He could get in the emergency pod. He could press the green button and rise to the surface. He would be safe. He would be a survivor. He would be taken to a lab somewhere and studied for the rest of his life. And the chorus would be destroyed by the depth charges, or they would break through and drown the world in blood. He would be human again, but the cost would be genocide or apocalypse. The other path was unthinkable. He could stay. He could embrace what he had become. He could side with the chorus. He could lead them. If he did, he could stop them from attacking the surface. He could save Mina and the crew of the Aegir. He could save the world from their wrath. But he would have to leave his old life behind forever. He would become the king of the deep, a monster living in the dark, responsible for a new kind of life. He thought of Mina's voice, the last link to his old world. He thought of the simple joy of sunlight and air. Then he looked at the external camera feed. He saw the chorus, his chorus, waiting for his command. He felt their devotion, their simple, pure existence. They were terrifying, but they were also innocent. They had only ever wanted to protect him. The choice was made. He opened a private, secure channel to the Aegir. He didn't know if they were listening, but he had to try. "Mina, are you there?" Her voice came back instantly, filled with static and fear. "Jen, I'm here. The Vanguard is serious. You have to get out of there." "I'm not coming, Mina," he said, his voice surprisingly steady. "What? What are you talking about? You have to. Listen to me. If I leave, they will be killed. Or they will win. There are too many of them. They will destroy the Vanguard and then they will keep going. They will do it to protect me. The only way to stop this war is for me to stay." He could hear her crying on the other end. "No, Jen, there has to be another way. We can explain. There is no time. There is no other way. This is the only path that saves everyone. Tell them I didn't make it. Tell them the base was destroyed in the initial accident. Let them think I'm dead." "Jin," her voice broke. "Goodbye, Mina. Thank you for being my friend." He closed the channel before he could change his mind. He then turned his attention inward to the chorus. He poured all his will into a single clear command. "Stop, do not attack. The threat is leaving." He felt their confusion, their protective fury. They wanted to fight. They wanted to eliminate the danger above. "I am your source," he thought, his mental voice firm and final. "You will obey. The threat is leaving. We are leaving." He pushed a new image into their minds, an image of movement, of traveling away from this place, away from the noisy world above, into the deep, quiet, safe darkness. Into the open ocean. A sense of acceptance flowed back from the chorus. The anger faded. The purpose changed. They would follow him. Anywhere. On the sensor screen, he saw the vast swarm of creatures begin to turn. They stopped their aggressive ascent and started to gather around the base in a new, orderly formation. They were preparing for a journey. Jin walked to the viewport one last time. He looked at the glowing city they had built for him. He was leaving it all behind. He was leaving his old self behind. He was no longer Jin, the marine biologist. He was the source, and he was taking his children home. The Vanguard hovered on the surface, its weapons ready. The crew watched their sonar screens with tense faces. The massive cloud of biological signals had been gathering, looking like a storm about to erupt from the deep. The order to release the depth charges was moments away. Then the impossible happened. The cloud began to move, but not upwards. It shifted sideways, flowing like a dark river along the trench. The thousands of individual signals began to merge into a single vast formation. It was not an attack. It was a migration. The entire swarm, along with the strange energy signature of Hadal Base, was moving away, sinking deeper into the uncharted parts of the ocean. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Commander Park stared at the screen. "What are they doing?" he muttered. On the Aegir standing beside the captain, Mina watched the same data. She felt a tear trace a path down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. She knew what was happening. Jin was keeping his promise. "He's leading them away," she whispered. The captain looked at her. "What did you say?" She straightened up, her face a mask of professional calm. "The threat is receding, sir. It appears the organisms are leaving the area. I recommend we stand down." Down below, Jin felt the base groan as the chorus took hold of it. They did not tear it apart. Instead, they surrounded the structure, their powerful bodies nudging it, guiding it. They were taking it with them. He sat in the control chair watching the external cameras. The world outside was a blur of moving black forms and soft blue light. They were traveling fast, faster than any submarine. He had set the base's systems to transmit one final message. A short burst of data showing a catastrophic power failure, followed by a simulated explosion. To anyone watching on the surface, it would look like Hadal Base had finally collapsed. Dr. Jin was officially dead. He felt no fear. Only a strange deep peace. The humming of the chorus's collective mind was a constant, soothing presence in his head. He was where he was meant to be. Days turned into a timeless journey. They left the Mariana Trench far behind, moving into the vast empty plains of the deep Pacific. The water was colder here, the pressure even greater. The chorus never tired. They built again, not a city this time, but a new home. They found a great underwater mountain range, its peaks still miles below the surface. In a sheltered valley between two peaks, they began their work. Jin watched in awe as they constructed a new structure. It was not made of rock and metal scraps alone. They secreted a hard, pearlescent material from their own bodies, fusing it together into graceful, flowing shapes. They built a dome, large enough to hold the remains of his base, and filled it with air they extracted from the water. It was a palace of crystal and bone, glowing from within by their gentle light. He now lived inside this palace. He no longer needed the heavy suit. His altered body had adapted completely to the pressure. He could breathe the water if he wanted to, though he still preferred the air in his new home. His eyes saw perfectly in the eternal dark. He stood at the opening of the dome, looking out at his kingdom. The chorus moved through the water in their silent, beautiful dances. They were not monsters to him anymore. They were his family, his people. He was their guardian, their teacher, their heart. On the surface, life moved on. The incident at Hadal Base was filed away as a tragic accident and a strange, unexplained deep-sea event. The official report stated that Dr. Jin had died a hero. A small memorial service was held. Mina attended the service. She stood by the ocean looking out at the endless blue. She didn't believe he was dead. Not in the way they thought. She felt a strange certainty that he was down there, somewhere in the deep, dark water. She missed her friend, but she was not sad. She had heard the resolve in his voice. He had chosen his path. In the deep, Jin felt a shift in the currents. He sent a thought to the chorus, a question. A large, older member of the chorus, the one who had first given him the gift, swam to the entrance of the dome. In its mind, it showed him an image. A pod of great whales passing far above them. They were no threat. They were just other children of the sea. Jin nodded. He understood. His role was not to conquer, but to coexist. To protect this hidden world, he was the source. He was the bridge between what was and what could be. His old life was a distant dream, a story from another world. This was his reality now, a silent, glowing reality at the bottom of the sea where he was never, ever alone.